Hi, I'm Billy Keels, the host of the Going Long podcast. Every week, I'm going to be here interviewing the absolute best in the business as it relates to real asset investing, as well as real Main Street investors. We're going to be having conversations where you can listen in, and that's going to help you to continue on your path to education so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident in investing long distance. So make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you're liking it as well, because that way you can get every single episode as soon as it comes out. And by the way, don't forget to leave today's episode a 5-star review. Let's go ahead and listen to today's conversation. Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so that you feel comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. I'm your host, Billy Keels, and if you've ever wanted to know how to develop a cracking A-team to help you be successful investing long distance, then guess what? Today is the conversation that you're going to want to listen to really until the very last word, because today's guest has literally written the book on investing in the U.S. With a background in structural engineering, back in 2012, he quit his job in Australia. Yeah, I did say Australia. And he moved halfway across the globe to the U.S. to chase his dream. You know, with limited funds, with no investing experience and no credit, this now 2-time best-selling author and the host of Investing in the U.S. podcast, as well as the co-founder of Wildhorn Capital, and a just all-around good bloke, Mr. Reed Goossens is here to join us today on the Going Long podcast. So Reed, welcome to the show, man.
Billy, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. It's been like ages, like many years since we've actually had a chance to catch up. I'm so inspired about what you have done, what you continue to do, and what you will do, specifically because you have a real place in your heart for helping people that are outside of the U.S. really understand more about the U.S. market, educating people. And that's just something that's also close to my heart and the entire Going Long family. So really excited to have this conversation with you today, man.
Awesome.
First and foremost, as you know, I like to ask everybody the same 5 questions, Reed. So the first one is, help us understand, where do you live in the U.S.?
I live in Los Angeles, California. I live specifically in a place called Leimert Park, which is about 2.5 miles from USC. We just bought a house there and renovated it. And looking to, my investment thesis on the personal house is just that the Olympic Games are coming in 2028. So I think that whole neighborhood's going to transition in the next 7 to 8 years. So that's where I live. And but I do business in Texas. We can get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into that, because I also love that you live in one place in the U.S. and you're actively investing somewhere else. So that's awesome. So in the LA area, and then I always like to start out with some positivity as well, Reed. So help us understand, what is the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours?
Wow, a lot of positive. I'm actually, because I'm calling you from Austin, I'm calling you from the hotel room. So I'm here for the week. I usually come down once a week, and in my weeks that I come down, I'm very, very busy. I had 2 extremely awesome meetings yesterday with potential business partners on some other deals that I'm doing on the side as maybe a key principal. And then I had a really great dinner with another Australian mate who just moved to, or who's been in Austin building a business in the trash removal industry, and trying to see some synergies with obviously owning large apartment communities here in Austin. Getting rid of trash is a big issue, or garbage, whatever you want to call it, as you call it here in the UK or in Europe. So yeah, those 2 meetings were really, really awesome in the last 24 hours.
Oh man, so that's really, really cool. Don't you just love when you can actually meet other people, and if they're from your home country, even better, especially when you've been out of the country for a while, and then you can start to talk about your business, and you also have complementary businesses, and saying, okay, well, this is a really cool person, great conversation from the same place, and wow, there's even potential business opportunities to do together, or work together. Yeah, it's really, really awesome, man. So listen, Reed, I appreciate you starting us off with some positivity, and now I kind of at a really high level talked about your story. I would love for you to share with the Going Long family, in your own words, really your backstory, and maybe talk to us about some of the major decisions that you made along the way to get to this point in your journey. And then from there, we'll find out what the future holds.
Yeah, sure. So as you alluded to in the beginning, I'm clearly from Australia, and I moved here in 2012. I was going to say 2020. That would have been last year. Moved here, 2012, and just moved here on a whim. It wasn't on a whim. It was, if I rewind back to when before the move. I finished engineering. I studied structural engineering in 2007, finished that in 2008, went to London and lived in London working on the 2012 Olympic Games. But in 2008, obviously you need a few years to build that infrastructure. And then in 2009, I went to the south of France and worked on super yachts for the mega wealthy. Just took 12 months to gallivant around the south of France. And during that time, that's where I met my then girlfriend, now wife, Erica, who is American. And that's where it all started, on the beaches of Spain in San Sebastian, and San Sebastian, Spain. Yeah. And it's got Spain's got a very close place in my heart. And through that, I finished off the super yacht work. I came across the Atlantic Ocean, came to the Caribbean, left the boat because I wanted to do more than just be a deckhand. And in 2009, I backpacked through New York, fell in love with New York, fell in love with this girl, went back to Australia, and then had 2 years in Australia sort of learning about real estate and getting the bug, and then before moving back to the US in early 2012. So a bit of a long story there, but that was a sort of the journey, because I met a girl in Europe, then moved to fell in love with a city like New York City, and then fell in love with her. And then, she actually came out to Australia for a period of time to study her master's in 2011. And then when she finished her master's, I just said, well, let's pick up and go, let's do it. So moved to New York City just because I wanted to live there, wanted to be an expat. I didn't have a job. I rocked up with no job. I had to, knock on doors. And so the whole shtick that I talk about on these different podcasts is my coming to America story and building something from nothing. And it truly starts with getting a job so I can get the visa, so I can be with the girl and all that sort of stuff. So that's the coming to America story in the beginning.
So I love that, man, that your own personal coming to America story. By the way, I met my wife, who's Spanish. We met in the south of France in a town called Montpellier. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure you know it well. And yes. In San Sebastian, we went almost through that last summer. And it is amazing when you give yourself these opportunities to just follow your dream, right? Mm-hmm. It took you from Europe to the US, from the US back home, and then from back home, then now back to your new home in the US, and finding love along the way, which I think is fantastic. And you mentioned, and I want to pull this thread. So you said that when you went back from the US back to Australia, your girlfriend at the time was studying a master's. You said like 2 years you just started looking into real estate. So my question is, how in the world did you actually even get interested in real estate when you just come back from the US and you were just like getting back to Australia to do other stuff?
Yeah, so I'm 2010. I'm back sitting in a cubicle, right? Structural engineer. I'd spent the last 2 years, abroad. Met this girl. She wasn't in Australia at the time. In 2010, it was just me being home and sort of a big come down from the party, right? I've been going, travel backpacking around the world and having a great time and having all these incredible experiences, and just sitting in this cubicle and going, wow, this is not what I signed up for. I didn't want to live in a cubicle for the next 40 years of my life. I was, mid-20s. I think I was 25 at the time when I got back. And that was the sort of the start of the fire within me to say, I need to do more with my life. What is more, right? I felt like I was a star athlete sitting on the benches watching the game go on, but I wasn't participating in the game. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was this spark or this fire started, but I didn't know what it was. And I didn't even know what entrepreneurship was. I didn't even know anything. I just wanted someone to pay me to live my life, to continue traveling. That's all I knew, right? So stumble across the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. And that was really the sort of the start of understanding financial IQ, understanding about it, trying to invest my money, and then passive income. So through that book, it was really the coin dropped. And that was then when I said to myself, okay, well, I'm a structural engineer. I probably have a skill set that I could, I'm already rubbing shoulders with people who are building stuff. Well, probably let's do real estate. So that was the start. And my structural engineering didn't give me any, major leg up in terms of the understanding real estate. I just went out and started consuming as much knowledge as I could possibly could. Books. I just happened to live in a city where the only real estate investment club was in my city. So I started attending this investment club. And over a period of the next 12 to 18 months, I really started to educate myself about doing something in Australia, whether it be fix or flip or lease options or something, as Erica was doing her master's degree. Come to the end of 2011, I sort of had been nearly self-educating for about 2 years at that point, but I still really had a desire to live abroad. So that's where we made the decision to say, screw it, I'm going to quit my well-paid engineering job and move halfway across the world and see what happens. So, yeah.
Yeah, man, I love the story that you're telling. And there's so many of us that are listening to you and we can really relate to what you're talking about, right? And so as you went back, like you weren't saying that you were looking for money. You were looking, if I understood you correctly, you were looking to use the skills that you already had to be able to build a lifestyle that you wanted to lead. And
Right.
So I love that. And I think that is fantastic and is inspiring for so many people. And I'm just curious, because you read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like I read Rich Dad Poor Dad too, and living here in Barcelona, it's like something happened. So when you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, did you have that idea of, oh man, I can create $200-300 a month in passive income, and I can actually control this? Did that happen to you?
Yeah, well, it was more to do with just trying to grow my financial literacy, and that's really where it started. It was through that, you talk about threads before, pulling that thread, that I started to realize, okay, this is what I need to be doing with the money that I'm earning in my day job. I need to be putting it to work somewhere. And that work, it can't just be sitting doing nothing. And then that sort of, you keep pulling that thread, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, maybe I could make a career out of this somehow. Keep pulling that thread. What about cash flow? Well, I'll keep pulling that thread. What about all the passive income? Oh, that's what I need to do, passive income, because then I can leave my day job and I don't have to work in a cubicle for the rest of my life. So it sort of comes full circle, but it's all about the journey you go on and the different, crumbs you pick up along the way, because you don't just jump to the end, right? You just start along this journey and you start learning things, and things intrigue you, and then you go down that path for a little bit and you come back and okay. So the whole journey of to educate yourself on real estate or being financially literate means that you go through an evolution that comes and sort of becomes part of your DNA, and the goal then becomes, I want to be an entrepreneur because I can see all these opportunities around me. And the book Rich Dad Poor Dad just took the blinkers off, right? It took the idea that you could create a business out of a lot of things, and through understanding real estate and how the fundamentals of real estate work, I can now look at many different businesses and think that's a great little business, and I know why, because I'm financially literate.
Love that, man. So at the end of the day, yes, it's financial literacy. And when that kind of took the blinders off for you and allowed you to really see new other business opportunities, it took you down that path. And for the Going Long family, I just really want to reiterate the fact that Reid has mentioned a number of times. It is a journey. Like it is, what is the next thing? What is the next thing? And then after you figure that next thing, then it continues to move you forward. It's not, I'm just here today, and then X number of years later, I'm going to be in this other place. It's step after step after step, and I love the way that you describe that, Reid. So you're in Australia, you decide that, all right, well, you wanted to get into real estate, but eventually you could have made the choice, just like me. I could have just decided to invest here in Barcelona and stayed in Barcelona. So I know you had some personal things, but also what was tell us about why this decision to invest in the United States instead of investing in Australia? Well,
again, it was more the itch to go and live and be an expat in the US. That was really it. And I was very close. I'd saved up some money in Australia to do something, but again, the sort of the nag on my shoulder was, well, if you don't make the jump, or you don't go and at least try, then you're going to wake up when you're 70 years of age and regret not giving it a crack and moving to the US and seeing if you could get a job. So it was more about the pushing of oneself to go and challenge, push those boundaries. And it wasn't until I moved to the United States and I finally got the job, and then within being 2 weeks fresh off the boat, I was at my first real estate club meeting in New York City. And that's when I realized all these other incredible opportunities that I didn't realize were available to me, but compared to my home country, was like the barriers to entry in these secondary and tertiary markets in the US were a lot lower than what they are in Australia. And I could get started investing with a lot less money than what I would have to have got done in Australia. And then go back to I could start cash flowing a lot quicker by using the principles of Rich Dad Poor Dad by buying in secondary and tertiary markets in in America. So again, it was sort of my superpower coming from a different country, seeing the opportunities that were available in the US and going, okay, let's just seize on these opportunities and again, picking up those crumbs. I had no intention to come here and be this, be a big, not big or be where I am today. It was just more of the picking up the crumbs, pushing the boundary, saying, hey, I want to do this. I want to push that boundary. I want to try this. Okay, this then leads to that. And all of a sudden you still look back and think, wow, I've come a long way. So that's the evolution of trying to get my first deal done. It wasn't until I actually moved to the United States.
Okay. And love that. And once again, and I want everyone to notice that you have a thread here, right? You're looking to solve your challenges. And then as you're solving your challenges, you recognize that, hey, listen, I may be able to help other people with this same kind of thing as well, based on some of the principles that you learned in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then you actively getting involved in other type of networking opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm sure that there was a certain point in your career, Reed, when you were getting started. So we'll go back to New York when you were there and you're in the networking opportunities, and you recognize that the barriers to entry were lower than back in Australia. But maybe talk to us about what the difference was between trying to really get things done on your own in the beginning versus maybe what happened once you realized that you could literally partner and team with other people.
Yeah, look, so for me in the beginning, it was nose stuck in a book, reading as much as I could. And at this point, Billy, I'd been sort of educating for about 2.5 years now. This is the middle of 2012. And I sort of changed my mind to start to understand the US investing lingo, because that was the big learning curve that I had to face when I first moved here. And the other thing is it was in the Big Apple, right? So it was networking on steroids compared to what I was used to. So it was just a completely different game. But once I got to that point of analysis paralysis, and also one other thing I'll also mention, that the tapestry of these different networking and real estate clubs around the United States is so incredible. Again, we're coming from a country that had the only club in the whole country in my home city, luckily. Some people don't realize what they have in their backyard until someone like myself comes and says, we don't have this back in Australia. Well, this is incredible. I pay $20 at the door and I can learn all this stuff. It's awesome. So then it was about, okay, well, going to the weekend seminars and the bus tours and all that sort of stuff, but knowing that I had to do it myself, right? I got to this point that I think I'm confident enough and ugly enough to go out and take that next step and go and do a deal by myself. And that's because I had to prove it to myself, right? That's the biggest thing. I had to prove that I could do it, and with my own money. And if I lost my own money, it was my money, right? That was the worst case scenario that could happen. And so I did. I went out and bought my first property for $38,000. And that was the start of the journey. And again, I had no understanding of credit scores. I didn't know what an LLC was. I didn't know what an EIN number was. And all this stuff I had to learn along the way. And I then had to back into what could I afford? Well, I could only afford a $38,000 property because that's all I'd saved up from my, working in the corporate world. So, but it got me going. It got me into the deep end because I was only going to learn so much reading a book. I had to go out and take action. And that's the part in the story that is really, really pivotal, because you don't get to deal number 10 without doing deal number 1.
Yeah, I love that, man. And it's so obvious when you say it, Reed, but I think a lot of times people will get to, all right, well, you're at these thousands of doors and you're doing this and you're doing that, but it all starts with actually taking action and taking action on that very first property. Everyone is different. You and I think, are very similar in that regard. I needed to do it myself first, just to kind of have the POC, the proof of concept. And then once that was done, very similar mindset. Hey, look, if this goes wrong, it's me, it's my money. I actually never even had any intention of, I didn't even know what syndication was. I didn't know anything about passive. I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. So very similar story to what you're talking about, but I just knew that I needed to not get out of the stock market, because that thing just was not working for me at all at that point in time. So another thing. So you mentioned today that you live in LA, you are in Austin. And so that's you're not in your backyard. So even though you went Australia to the US, and then you were also helping other Australians understand about the US market as well as other people within the US. But you're in LA and you're going long distance again. What in the world? Why would you not just invest in LA where you are?
Well, that's good question. And when I started, LA, so the coastal markets in the United States, the New Yorks, the San Franciscos, the LAs, they're very similar to, high appreciation markets in Europe and in Australia, right? So very similar, like high appreciation, low cash flow.
Yep.
So when I started investing, I was looking to the more moderate areas where when I say moderate, they had, central cities, which were growing in the interior of the United States, that had very good fundamentals in GDP growth and population growth, but had a lot more moderate cap rate. And that is where I stumbled upon, through my mentor, I started doing deals in Texas, in actually Dallas, Texas. And then from that, I said, I like the Texas market. Maybe let's go and look at San Antonio, because that's one of the cities in Texas that is really, really affordable compared to some of the other cities in the country. So it was just more, following my nose into things that I thought were affordable, one, but two, I could get some cash flow out of it to keep putting money in my pocket so I could keep getting to that financial freedom goal.
Yeah, love that. So it's continue to take action, continue to move forward, and being able to know what it is that you're looking for. So if you were looking for appreciation over a long amount of periods of time, then LA would have probably been the perfect market for you. But because you were focused on cash flow, you went somewhere else. And once again, taking action and moving forward. So one of the things that I'm sure that you see a lot, and one of the things that we tend to talk about a lot here, and with your expertise, really would love to understand, like as you're looking to invest long distance, one of the most critical things, I like to talk about having your personal philosophy and being clear on what it is, like you're talking about cash flow. And then after that, the specific location to be aligned with that. And then it's the third part that everybody is it's difficult. And that's making sure that you're working with the right team for you. So Reed, could you share with us maybe some of the things that you have learned as it relates to building and or associating with yourself or your brand or your company, active or passive, with the right team in the right location? How do you really focus on making sure that you have an alignment with the right team?
I think the big thing is that, again, evolution will happen. My team that I started with in the beginning is not the same team I have today, right? And part of being the sort of the coach of the team, I guess, because who's in your team, you will constantly, it's my responsibility to put the best players on the field at any one point. Right now, when I started in real estate, I could only, I was only buying small properties. So it was going to only attract a certain type of team. As I evolved into working with bigger properties and bigger teams and, more, I wouldn't say more professional, but when you have a lot more at risk because they're just larger properties, you sort of get the more institutional level, professionalism from your property management team, from your general contractor, from your CPA, from your bookkeeper and your lawyers. Like all these people I still had in the beginning, but it was it's upscaled because I'm now doing 10, 15, 20, $40 million deals. And it's just a different league that I'm playing in compared to that first $38,000 property. It's just, again, a different league. Not that it was a rookie one, you can still make a lot of money in the space I started with if you did it right, but it's just a different type of, the scale attracts a different type of team. So my team today, and again, I will continue to change the team as I grow and as the portfolio grows, because I need to bring the right players on the field to help me navigate and try and not be the smartest guy in the room, but try and be self-aware enough to say, okay, I don't need to be doing this. I need to hire someone who is better than me at my job or at that particular niche in the business. So I need to get them on board on the team so we can keep the ship moving in the right direction.
And I love that as well, because it is about, I think it's Jim Collins that says, make sure that you have the right people on the bus. And as you evolve as the leader or the bus conductor, as they would say here in Spain, like you need to make sure that you have everyone on the bus, that they're the right people on the bus to do that. I don't get a chance to ask this question, and thanks for helping us understand just in terms of team selection and evolution. But in the same way that I am here in Europe, right, and being able to attract people that are invested in the U.S. market, but they're here in Europe, I know what that's like to try and do the translation, right? From different countries, different languages sometimes, and also now different norms and different understanding. Sometimes people are like, how's that even possible? You can get cash flow of this type because they live in Barcelona or London or wherever. Talk to us a little bit about what that was like getting started initially for you, translating from the Australian, from the entire country, right? Helping people to understand more about the U.S. market when you were 15,000 kilometers away.
Yeah, well, so the big thing for me, like my brand is to what was initially to attract international capital, and that was just to niche in the beginning, and now I've pivoted to attract all types of capital. But yeah, my brand was really originally was built on, okay, I'm this Aussie in the US figuring out this stuff, about getting started. And so when I was talking to people who are from other countries, both from Europe, Canada, Australia, I sort of had to break it down into what I knew people were going to understand. And so the big thing that you can sort of, hang your hat on when you're talking to people is looking at states' GDP. So when you're talking about Texas, right, I'm investing in Texas. Well, I know that the GDP of Texas is greater than that of all of Australia. So just having that one statistic puts it into concept, into perspective, I should say. Then you talk about population growth, and you talk about how many people live in the state of Texas. Again, more than all of that of Australia. So it's sort of like these different concepts you start talking about. And then I get into, multifamily. Well, multifamily doesn't even exist in Australia. I don't think it even exists on a large scale in Europe, And so you start, and they say, what do you mean multifamily? You mean 6 units? I'm like, no, I mean 300 units and one property. And they're like, so you sell one unit to condos? Like, no, it's not a condo. You buy the whole thing. And so just understanding that, and then I have to break it down into, okay, well, why is it the Australian market the way it is, or why is the European market the way it is when it comes to why they don't have multifamily? And when I start to scratch the surface there, it actually really comes down to financing. And so the financing of it is all to do with, in Australia, and probably similar to into Europe, it's a build to sell model. So you were building an apartment block, but you aren't owning the entire apartment block and I don't want to say the financing isn't as sophisticated, but there's just not that level of understanding that I could own this entire building. Yep. and I can build this entire building off of future net operating income, thus a future value, and so I can lend on that, right? Where in Australia, and I think similar in Europe, similar lending practices in Europe, is that they will require you to sell X amount of units before the loan is then issued to build the building, right? Yep. In the US, we have a thing that don't have that. They have multifamily financing where they can say, I want to come and build a 200 unit property, right? Great. What's going to be the future NOI of this property, and thus what's the future value? Okay, this future value is going to be X. I can lend up to X percent of that value, and thus we can go and build that. So you again, take that back over the last 30, 40 years where buildings have been built. That is why, again, that's a build to rent model rather than a build to sell model like condos, which you have in Europe and we have in Australia. But again, it comes down to the financing of it and how the US just has, and I'm going to use the word sophisticated, but I can't think of another better word, but it's a more sophisticated lending system when it comes to multifamily and housing in the United States, because there's so many bloody people that they needed to create these other arms of lending to accommodate large-scale production of housing for the population.
And so this is, just another area or depth of your expertise, right? Being able to give the example that you just gave us, and also not just making it about kind of your origin story initially, really working to help to translate for those Australians who are interested in the U.S. And then, of course, now it's become much broader than that, but also with your deep European experience as well, being able to make that translation and having that understanding is something that really adds a lot of value. And so that, and so that comes through and through. Now, I did want to mention one other thing. So you have been a 2-time best-selling author, and it's not easy writing a book. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about your books, the inspiration for your books, and who the books were really made to help, and how, as people are listening to you now, they're like, okay, well, he's got a couple books. He's going to tell me a little bit about them and how this could help me.
Sure. So the first book is from the podcast, right? It's repurposing content that I created. So I started the podcast back at late 2014, early 2015. I think I'm over 300 episodes deep now.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. It's been a lot of work and a labor of love. But when I wrote the book, I think that was back in 2017. I'd already been a couple of years into the podcasting, so I could then go back and I really curated the first 20 to 40 episodes of my podcast to be the journey. And through creating that audio content with those guests, I was able to then transcribe that into book form, add my story to it, get an editor involved, and really just repurposing content that I'd already created. So that book, the first book, is literally called Investing in the US, The Ultimate Guide to US Real Estate. It is written with the lens from an international perspective, but you could be an American, pick it up and still start to learn the lingo about investing here in the United States, or just starting to invest. Where you go find markets, how do you underwrite deals, what is syndication, all these different things that I learned along the way. I put it into sort of a step-by-step guide in that first book. So that's, again, repurposing content, and that was really where it came from. It was a very difficult thing when I first wrote the book, it was very much it read like a textbook, and I had to get an editor involved to help me sort of, intertwine my story between the pages. So I don't envy anyone who's writing a book, put it that way. And then the second book, 10,000 Miles to the American Dream, Our Story of Financial Freedom, actually comes from I started a bit of a mastermind group with some other Aussies back, probably around about 2016, 2017. And it was some people that I interviewed on my show, all Australians, all over here. They would all come across the ditch and, try to apply out, trying to create jobs create businesses in real estate. Mm-hmm. And so over a period of time, we got to know one another really, really well. Our wives and girlfriends started hanging out, and we just said, hey, should we write a book about what we know? And so then we just divided up into different chapters. And so each chapter is an individual author who is Australian, but telling their different niche of the real estate industry. So we've got a guy in there who does mobile home parks. We've got a guy in there who does real estate technology. I talk a lot about branding and how to start raising capital, my 6P formula that I came up with. We've got another guy in there who's all about fixing and flipping entry-level housing in San Antonio, and how he's created this incredible mass production machine to pump out all these small houses. So there's just so many different elements of the book, and that was what we thought we wanted to share it with people. And so it's called 10,000 Miles to the American Dream, i.e. 10,000 being the distance from Australia to the United States.
Awesome, man. So cool. So, and like I said, we're going to include both of your books in the show notes, and with the foundation of really continuing to help people understand. And that is one of the things that I love about what you do, Reid. It really is at an international scale, because although there initially you started really helping and focusing on a specific niche, what you're providing everyone is, it doesn't matter really where you live in the world. It's something that's going to be able to help you. So love that. And also being able to do collaborations is fantastic. So thing is, Reid, I want to just keep talking to you, right? And asking you a bunch of questions and stuff like that. But hey, look, we only have so much time. So
you have to get me back on the show.
Yeah, you know what? There we go. I like that.
Round two.
All right, we can do that. So listen, here's the thing. We've got to get into the going long final three. But before we do that, really quickly, I would love for you to help us understand, what do the next 12 to 18 months look like for you, the people that you're serving, and some of the different things that you are doing to positively impact lives?
I think in terms of the evolution, I'm starting a couple of different mastermind groups. One's called the Multifamily MBA. I've partnered up with a gentleman by the name of Stephen Pesavinto. He's not in my business today, but we're sort of starting a educational piece to it, and I'm not doing I am doing the education, the teaching, but I'm only coming in as sort of more the talent, because I've got a full-time real estate business to run, and he's sort of doing the marketing. But it's allowing sort of giving back where I started with a mentor. I think that's really powerful to start with mentors and have different collaborations. So sort of passing the buck forward and creating a group where people can learn from what I've created, and again, passing it forward. So that's really important on the educational side. On the business side, looking to evolve the business, buy more deals. Probably we want to try and get to, we're at 2,700 units today. We'll probably be close to 4,000 units within the next 2 years. And then trying to build other ancillary incomes from those businesses, i.e. we talked about trash earlier, picking up the trash, how does that business come into the ecosystem, and try and create a business ecosystems of things now that we're getting to scale within the portfolio. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Okay, fantastic. So looking to scale the business growth, 2,700 units to around 4,000, also incorporating other parts of the ecosystem. Can you just remind us the name of the educational piece that you're going to be collaborating with?
It's called the Multifamily MBA.
Okay.
Yep. And Stephen Pesavinto is the gentleman who is running the marketing behind that.
Okay, Stephen Pesavinto and the Multifamily MBA, and so we'll make sure that we include that as well in the show notes. So if you want to reach out to Reed and Stephen, definitely do that on the education side, and we'll make sure that people find out more about what you're doing at Wildhorn as well. So listen, we got to get into the Going Long Final Three. The thing is, Reed, I never ask anybody the Going Long Final Three unless they tell me they're ready. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Awesome. I knew you would be, man. I knew you would be. So here we go. First question is, we started with you in the U.S., in the LA area. Now I'd like to bring it back to this side of the pond. So what is your favorite European city? And you've already lived here. So that you've either visited or is still on your bucket list to visit?
Oh, there's so many. The city that I lived in and I fell in love with, two cities, was London. Obviously, I lived there for a year. And then I lived in Antibes in the south of France, which was a really beautiful city. Places that I would want to go to that I haven't been to yet is I want to really go to Greece. And I want to go to Dubrovnik and all those sort of beautiful places in the Mediterranean. I'd also really want to go to Turkey. I think it'd be another cool place to go to as well. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you said London first, so I'm going to take that because I know I love all these places. So I'm going to take that one first, and unless somebody else wants to change it, and then they'll change it, and then I'll find out about it later. So awesome. So listen, thing is, all successful people, Reed, that I know, the common thread is that have only made one mistake in their entire trajectory, and so that's the cool kind of okay, got it wrong again. Look, successful people like yourself constantly, and I think this is one of the things that we have to help people to understand, constantly making mistakes. But it's not, or learning opportunity, or however you want to think about it. But the idea is, it's not just that. It's what do you do after that? What's the lesson that you learn? What is the lesson that you would pass forward to the Going Long family, Reed?
I think the biggest thing is allowing yourself the mental space that it will take time. So the biggest lesson is this is a journey, and it's easy to say it, but when you're in it and you're trying to change careers, you're trying to keep food on the table, you're trying to hustle and have a side hustle, and you can get to burnout really, really quickly. It's all about perspective and enjoying the journey in which you're on, because we're going to scale to the mountaintops, and after that mountaintop, there'll be another mountaintop, and if we're never satisfied within our own skin and comfortable with who we are and the journey we're on, then we will never be satisfied. And so I think there's so many people out there who quit at things, who give up too easily because they don't have the mindset on the front end to say, achieving this financial freedom may take me 10 years or 15 years, and that's okay. And that's my journey, and being okay with it and not giving yourself the stress to be like, I need to continue working. I need to continue doing stuff to grind, because it's all about the journey. It's all about, enjoying it along the way. Otherwise, what are we put on this earth to do, right?
Yeah, I love that. And that was platinum advice from Reed. So make sure that you do understand it will take time, but better to sacrifice 15 years than 50 years of your life doing something that you don't want to do. So love that. And then let's get into the last one, which is really helping us to feed our mind. Once again, you've already written 2 books, so you've actively put two times the value out there already. But help us to understand, what is the one book that you would recommend for the Going Long family?
I really enjoyed a book called Key Person of Influence by Dan Priestley. It helped me change my mind of who I am, how my business is really about me, Reed Goossens. Like that, it's not about Wildhorn or the brands. It's about people invest in me first and foremost, and they've got to trust me. So I am a business, and being a key person of influence in an industry has really been a book. The book written by Dan Priestley has really been a grounding explanation of how to grow that brand and how to grow that business of oneself to attract more capital. And it can be, in any industry. You could be a dentist, you could be a lawyer, you could be, what I'm in the business of raising capital for real estate. It's about putting yourself as a key person of influence in your industry through different things like podcasting and book writing and being a thought leader. And it's creating that thought leadership through trust and transparency through a personal brand.
Love it. Trust and transparency through the personal brand, key person of influence, Dan Priestley. Definitely check that out. And I'm going to highly recommend that the entire Going Long family reach out to Reid, because as you talk about also to understanding your brand and how that can play into the role of being able to be this key person of influence is something that you do extremely well. So look, I'm thinking about when you even talked to us about you getting started and being in Europe and in 2009 and then from the south of France and then going back to the United States and then from there back to Australia and then from Australia back to the United States. No real true experience, no credit, and you've just really taken action and you've taken action and you've taken action and you haven't looked too far ahead. And with that curiosity and understanding and building networks and following through on the things that you say, it's helped you to get to where you are today. And like you said before, like you're not done, like you're just at the next point in your journey because you are on a journey to go out and positively impact so many lives. And I know, like, I'm super excited to be in touch with you again soon, already thinking about the next conversation we're going to have here. And I know that there's so many people that are Going Long family that are thinking to themselves, how do I get in touch with Reid? I got to find out more about him. I got to find out more about what he's doing. I want to learn from him. So Reid, help us understand, man, what is the best way for the Going Long family to learn more about you and get in touch with you and your teams?
Easiest way is to go to reidgoossens.com. That's reidgoossens.com. You can find out all the you can invest with me finding out how to invest with me. You can see all my stuff on the podcast front, the book front, the audio books. And if you're interested to reach out to me directly, you can hit me up at info@reidgoossens.com.
Fantastic, Reid. And you make it very, very simple. Your website is full of educational content, really talks and shows about the different things that you're doing. You make it really, really easy. So Going Long family, go over to reidgoossens.com and you'll be able to learn more about what Reid and his teams are doing there. So listen, Reid, I really just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for investing your time with me and the entire Going Long family, man. It's been really awesome. Thank you.
Hey, man, thank you so much. It's great to connect after all these years.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And then just like 30 seconds quickly for the Going Long family. Listen, Reid left so much greatness today, and he's really helped you understand how you can do these things from wherever you are in the world. You have a unique opportunity today. Share today's episode with 2 or 3 other people, right? Be that person of influence, that key person of influence, as Reid talked about before, to help bring other like-minded people to our community. And also, too, take a second to leave us your honest review of today's conversation. Reid and I both want to know. I go through every single one of the reviews, and it's something that we continue to do to attract great guests like Reid, and also to be able to improve everything that we're doing here on the podcast. So I'm really looking forward to welcoming you back on the next conversation. And until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much.
Wow, don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? When I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me like a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long-distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode, so go out and make it a great day.